like to call special budget meeting of council to order Monday, May 9th, 2022. Approval of the agenda, please. Councilor Norbury.
That the May 9th, 2022 special budget council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. New business 3.1. 2022 tax rate setting, 2022 operating and capital budgets. A report from the Director of Finance dated May 9th, 2022 to seek 2022 tax rate setting and approval of the 2022 operating and capital budgets. I'd like to move this for discussion. Seconder, Councilor Krakauka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Ms. Torval, can Ms. Tegrity introduce, please?
Yes, Mayor Council. I will let council or allow council to ask Ms. Tegrity directly questions regarding the budget, just to facilitate ease of flow of discussion and conversation and whatever. So
Certainly.
yeah, so yes, you may.
Thank you. Ms. Tegrity.
Council and members of the public. I thought we would start on the assessment change. So in front of you, I did put a copy for you to take a look at. There has been a little bit of an increase this year, but pretty much the same as prior for everything else. So it increased to 3 in total. We could see that. And then on the assessment change from 2021 to 2022, obviously there's been some significant uplift in residential properties, and I think it's happening all around at the moment, particularly in BC. So yeah, there's a 6.40% increase overall compared to 2021. Not too much change in the other classes. Just a little, it kind of seems like a high increase when you look at, decrease in class 5. But I think I looked at the light industry. I think there were a couple of changes, maybe related to some things kind of winding down. So I think that's why the improvement did reduce.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that one okay?
Not really, no.
So this is on your page number 6. So just to show you where we were at in 2021. That was the 2021 collection rates, tax rates and revenue collected in total. And then, so comparing to 2022, see the assessments gone up 321, 341. So the actual, within the budget, obviously we've had quite a few budget discussions, gone back and forth on quite a few things, and there's been some changes, but overall we, for the budget to be balanced, we do need this additional 188,713. So that is made up from, for this example, this is made up from the uplift in assessment. I'm not saying that council has to go with this, but I wanted to do this example first before I shift to the next one.
So just to recap, this would be using the same mill rate, but increase in assessment value, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So I basically just took the same rate from 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, something that has to always be considered is class 2 utilities has to stay at that 40 rate.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's entirely up to council, but I felt, I've looked back to previous council meetings. I've seen, we've had kind of a lot of change here in Tunbridge. for sure. There's been, obviously major going up, major going down, like industry changes last year. So it seems like what normally happens is council likes to see it put back to zero, and then kind of see what the difference would be if council decided to put, say, 2% on residential or 5% on, say, major, or, so I thought I would then scale back the rates. So basically what I've done is I'm taking the mill rates back now, so it's at 0%. So the new assessments come in, but I'm saying that the council decides if they want to give, which uplift they want to give to each class.
Okay. Any questions, council? Okay. Thank you.
So, I mean, basically, probably it's good to look at the percentage of collection by class. I think it's always a good area to kind of look at, so it sort of gives you an idea, who's paying, like for instance, major industry is paying around 40% of our taxes. Currently, at the moment here, it's 13% for residential. So basically, there's a slight little difference, but I had to scale back utilities because with the bringing the new assessment back, I ended up having to minus part of it out. And this is just an example. The light industry, I just to balance, I've used those two to balance it out. But for example, say if I do a little example here, and it's not by any means saying that council goes with this, but
For sure.
say if residential, that would be a very big increase, but does, for example, that would be very close to what our requirement would be to balance the budget, 188,000.
Councilor Norbury?
Can you, I'm sorry, I do have decent eyesight, but I can't tell how much you've changed the percentage.
Okay, so for residential, I just put in 0.42%.
4-2, okay, yeah.
And then for major, I put in the 5%. And I flow to the side. So basically, I mean, that would mean major would take the biggest hit for the tax increase. That's just an example.
And you had mentioned that we do need to make up that 188
Yes.
in order to balance. Okay. Councilor Norbury?
Can just for discussion's sake, so we can see what the numbers are like. I do like trying to stay as close to previous year's collection on residential as possible. Can we see keeping that at 0 and light industry at 5%? And the 0 on major? Or 2% on major, 0 on major to start?
So that would bring us around 151,000. So, and then council would have to make the decision if, to make up the rest, whether that comes from stabilization reserve or from surplus.
Okay. Questions, comments? Councilor Majinski?
You bet. So when you initially put in the 0.4% on residential, was that based off of last year's at 13.03 added on? Or is that on the 14.28 added on?
So it's basically based on last year's tax rate.
At the 13.03?
So taking the the new assessment for the class, but rolling it back to last year's tax rate.
And by tax rate, you mean mill rate?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. So yeah, that 13%, Councillor Majinski, is the percentage of the collection. So I think you'd want to be looking at the tax rate or mill rate.
7.1.
Correct, yeah.
Could I also take us to another spreadsheet that I have just to show, because I do feel that obviously I have looked at some differing rates on the residential, and there has been a swing from, you know, like a 10%, a 30% on some properties.
For assessments.
Yeah, so I just want to take you to a different spreadsheet before we
Please.
come back to this, because I think it will just help.
Please.
You see?
Not quite the numbers, no. I believe this is a spreadsheet of hers.
This is for page 7.
7? Thank you.
So I just wanted to give you an example of our area, municipalities in our area. Obviously, some are city, but it just sort of helps. One thing I will say on this one though, it's quite noticeable to me that some of the municipalities aren't showing their user fees, being water, sewer and garbage, because they probably don't include them on their tax bills. We do, as do some others like Dawson Creek. But I know like Fort St. John, they must do their utilities separate. Taylor's probably the same as well. So although it's you want to compare it, it's you know, it's not always easy when they don't include that. So looking at this table here, does that look odd up on yours above? You can read it, okay? So this was just, I took a snapshot of a couple of properties, average single family home that had gone up just short of 10%, just to give you an idea of what that looks like, what the increase looks like in a year. So basically that's using my first example that we just decide to tax with the assessment change. So just to give you an example, if it was, so we had the average single home and then we had a higher value single home. So you could see what it was per year, or what it would be per year and what it would be per month. Same with the strata condo and a mobile home. We have noticed quite a few of these type properties have gone up, and I don't know if that's because it's been a while since they have been reassessed, or if it's just been related to sales activities in the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, questions, comments? No. Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. So if we keep the mill rate the same, on an average, a household will pay $85 a year more in taxes this year?
If they're assessed, this example at the top one, well, the two at the top there, that's if your assessment has gone up around 10%.
10%,
Yeah, that's correct.
I think. Well, I just think that's probably fairly close for most. I think some are less, so I imagine it's Probably right around 10%,
Close, yeah.
between 5 and 10.
Yeah, I think so. Any other questions, Councillor Howe?
Do you have any indication of if the government is going to be changing any of the school taxes, or the regional district is going to be changing their taxes to lower them to come more in line with the mill rates? Like, and what I mean by that is everybody in British Columbia's assessment went up. You know, some people in our community are over 36% for their properties. If we leave the mill rates the same as what we're suggesting in the example, so that we have a balanced budget, some people in Tumbler Ridge will see an increase of 35% on their municipal taxes in Tumbler Ridge. That's massive in my mind. Do we have any indication if the regional district is going to lower anything to lower the burden on that? Or because if they all keep their mill rates the same, like we're suggesting to do, you know, some people's tax bills are going to be thousands of dollars higher than what we have. Do we have any indication of that?
Integrity?
To Councillor Howe, I'm not aware of that happening. I mean, I think the regional districts definitely has gone up, as has the school tax. You know, I think it will be a year-on-year basis that each service will have to start like reassessing where they're at. Yeah, and I'm not saying that this is what I suggest, but this is where we're at, and
I understand.
And that might be something, like I said, we could scale it back, and then
Yeah, and
council decides.
as far as I understand, it isn't really an option at the regional district to keep the mill rate the same. It's whatever the budget comes in at, that's what's being collected. So last year, the budget decreased by 6% overall. This year, the budget increases by 14%, I believe. But a lot of those increases are sub-regional in nature as well. So it doesn't, the 14% doesn't directly affect Tumbler Ridge per se, but yeah. Follow up, Councillor?
No, let's go for it.
Okay. Questions, comments? Councillor Howe?
Like balanced budget, I think everyone here would agree is that's what we're shooting for. We don't want to take money out of reserves to cover the budget. We don't need to tax people anything more to add any more to reserves than what we already are mandated to do. But like that to me is the elephant in the room, is the $188,000 is going to be $141,000 anyways, more on the backs of the residential taxpayers in Tumbler Ridge. So, you know, like it's to a degree, it's out of our hands a little bit because of what happened with the BC assessment. But on the other hand, we can certainly change the mill rate to soften the blow. And that's kind of where I am, is I'd like to see us come up with some way to soften the blow here. I'm not in favor of any increase in taxes ever. I think that us as a council can do a better job of cutting costs, finding areas to save a few bucks rather than having to put that back on our residents. But that's where I am with it, and I just, you know, lots of numbers, lots of interesting stuff in here, but on average, just our municipal tax rate, you're looking at about $141,000 that we're going to increase what we are collecting from the residents from 2021 to 2022. That's an increase over last year of 12%.
If we go with the same mill rates.
Correct.
Right.
To give us a balanced budget at this point.
Correct.
So to me, I'm not in favor of that. I would like us to find some ways either to cut a little bit out or spread that increase around a little bit. I'm always more in favor of cutting a few things out, because I think that, you know, there's a bit of overspending in wages in the DTR right now. I think if we could find some way to trim some wages back out of it, that might be a solution that would work. But I don't know how we go about doing it this late in the game. So that's my thoughts on it. I'd like to see us come up with some way to cut some money back to soften the blow. Somebody in a mobile home in Tumbler Ridge having to pay an additional 36% in municipal taxes on their tax bill. That's a lot. That's a lot of extra money
It's a big increase.
if we don't change this. So
Yeah, and you had mentioned about using reserves to try and balance the budget. I was looking over the capital and special projects budget, seeing if there was ways we could cut that as well. And, one of the big costs was the golf course road, of just over $1 million there. But that's coming out of reserve already too. So it's not really affecting, like it would be affecting the overall budget, but it's already coming out of reserve. It's not new tax money that we would need to collect. So that's, I think, a tricky part, that if we want to decrease or the overall budget by 141,000, we'd have to look at the actual tax collection of new capital in order to do that, I believe. Ms. Tegarty, correct me if I'm wrong, is the 141 that we're needing, or 188, sorry, that we're needing to balance, that's overall budget, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we are already using on this capital and special projects 1.7 of our reserves, but I believe that those reserves are the RFFE, reserve for future expenditure reserves, like previously budgeted in years past that have carried forward. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So, yeah, okay. Councillor Howe.
But overall, are we not putting the same amount of money in reserves as that what we're taking out? That's why we have an even number. Yeah, there may be more coming out of the paving, but overall, the other things that we put it into is why we have a balanced budget. For instance, if we take a pickup truck out for $100,000, that lowers our budget by $100,000, because it's $100,000 that doesn't have to go into the reserve. So I don't quite understand what you're saying by, if we were to cut the golf course out for $1 million, the road to the golf course, the way I understand it is we're $1 million in the good at that point. Well, that's the way I understand it.
Overall budget,
Sure.
right. But the money that's being slated for the golf course project is coming out of a reserve already.
Fair enough, right? The money that we're putting that money back into reserves and not spots.
Could, yeah, absolutely. Councillor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I understand where Councillor Howe is coming from in terms of residential tax, and that some people are paying more. I own a mobile home, and like talking to people who live in other cities, I'm lucky paying the taxes that we pay. We look at some things I think we need to think about when we're coming off of budgets. We need to think about inflation, the costs of services that we deliver. Right? I don't want to cut services to our community. And if we look at inflation in Canada, it's almost 6% this year, 5 to 6%. They're at the end of March. So I'm not saying that we put that all on the residents. I think light industry can chip in a little more here. If we look at light industry, Councillor Lehman, I see you're squeamish, but most of that class is CNRL. CNRL, quarter 1, 2022, posted $7 billion. They made $7 billion. To compare, if they made that throughout the year, to compare that to an individual who made $100,000, equivalent to about $5 would be asking from them. If we asked them for $1 million, it's the equivalent of asking someone worth $100,000, $5. It's nothing. So I'm not saying they have to take the brunt of it, but again, CNRL, $30 billion are going to make this year. Let's ask them for a couple more percent. We don't even need to ask them for inflation percentages. Let's put 4% on light industry. Help alleviate the burden to our residents.
Yeah, I do think you need to look at assessments too, though. And CNRL isn't the only company involved in light industry, obviously, but last year, light industry's assessment went down 30% and we collected the same amount from them. So they took a very significant increase due to assessment. This year, they've gone down 2% or 1%, I think. Councillor Norbury.
But to add to that, though, Mayor Bertrand, is we tax them the same amount and they bounce back. It's not saying that. So I think that shows taxation doesn't affect their industry.
It will to a point. Regionally, this is the highest taxed region in the entire company. The entire company. So when it gets to a point, if it's not feasible, there's a reason that the assessments are going down every year is because they're shutting in wells. Because they can't make it feasible anymore. So I think we have to be careful on who we want to pick on as far as our groups go here. And it's a little bit more objective by going by assessment values than it is just picking a group and taxing it. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. So even though CNRL made a significant profit, most of that didn't come from here, probably 1 or 2% came from here. And the other thing is, if you start taxing light industry more, it's like taxing P&G more. You tax them more, they're just gonna pass that off to the consumer. So eventually the consumer is gonna pay more. So you gotta be careful how you treat this light industry tax bracket, because in the end, it's gonna come back on the consumer one way or another.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Howe?
I agree with Councillor Norbury to a degree here that I think we could look at light industry if we need to find somewhere to make up a few dollars. Yes, CNR is a major contributor to that, but so is Canlin, Spectra Energy, Tourmaline, Crown Provincial. There's a lot of gravel pits that are involved in that. Spectra Energy is massive. Spectra Energy's their assessment from 19. This is an old record I got. It's almost $15 million. So they're make up, what is that, half of it, right? So it is the pipelines and it's the stuff that Bernie's talking about as well, and but we have to find somewhere to come up with. Either we got to cut a little bit out to get down to 188. I just don't feel comfortable sticking it all on top of the residential taxpayers.
Absolutely.
At this point. So if there's a consensus around here, we've either got to raise it somewhere else or we've got to cut something out of our budget. Is there, to me, I look at the budget, I see some pickups that I think that we could just cut out. Give the water, the Toyota pickup truck that's there, take that out for a year and do that in a year's time. I mean, the truck still runs and running around today. We might pay some higher maintenance costs and we might get burned and have to put an engine into it or something. But to me, I look at something like that. Yeah, it's a $65,000 we could knock out of the budget here for that. It's an easy, low-hanging fruit to knock off, and then maybe raise the light industrial taxes slightly. So.
Yeah, there's definitely options for sure. I was also thinking about the golf course project, possibly a 2-year project instead of just a 1-year project. I find a lot of the road projects up in the north here, the base doesn't get done till September, October, and they seem to be rushing to get pavement on it before snow flies. And I don't know if that's ideal conditions for pavement, but that's a possibility of putting that $1 million project into a 2-year project. Councillor Howe?
But as well as I do, mobilization costs to do asphalt and paving and stuff, that $1 million project will not be $1 million over 2 years. You can't split it $50,000 each way. You're gonna have mobilization costs in and out twice. So to me, I think I'm ready to bite the bullet on the golf course road. I think it's a jewel of the community. I think it's something that we need to promote more. I think we can get more stuff going. The campground that we had down there is full all the time. Even through COVID, it's full. So I think it's just kind of the start that we could add some more stuff down there at some point, or get somebody else to add some stuff in there so it doesn't cost us. I'm not quite in favor of that one. I wish we could knock a little bit out of it. I think if we had better information, maybe we could knock half of the parking lot out or don't pave the entire thing. But I don't know where we are on that project. I'm not sure of what the golf course road even entails at this point.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Mobilization is 2 different companies though, or 2 different groups. Like the base equipment is different than the paving equipment, so it would be 2 mobilizations anyway. Honestly, I was just thinking of making it into a 2-year project, getting the base done first, and that knocks off $500,000 off of this budget anyway. That is our major project this year, is the golf course road. I don't know. It's a possibility. And also, Councillor Norbury mentioned inflation. I think we do need to consider that this evening as well. It's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, and it likely will get worse. And we do have some major capital funding projects in the future, not only with some of our buildings, but also possible airport and paving as well. So I think we need to plan for the future as well and continue to build our reserves. So I'm not overly in favor of just balancing, to be honest. I think we need to continue to build our reserves for future expenditures. Thoughts, questions? Councillor Kirkcalgar?
So just on that, let's talk a little bit more about the golf course. You mentioned earlier that it's only reserve, it's not new taxation. So making it a 2-year project, all it does is keep more money in the reserve,
Correct.
right? But my understanding through staff is we're adding money to the reserve from this budget. Like we do every year, just like the previous councils did. I mean, let's give some credit where it's due there, where the previous councils back in the day when this community was first built, even when it was newer and all the money they've saved, is the reason why we have the reserves. So to me, when you say that's good as a 2-year project, understand that if it's a reserve, it's not new taxation. To me, we're looking for $188,000 of new taxation budget to balance this budget. It's $188,000 of new taxation.
Ms. Tegrity, can you explain, please?
So Mayor and Council, that's correct. It isn't new. If I say isn't new capital, it is coming out of reserve. So it's the revenue comes in from the reserve, but the expense comes out. So it wouldn't benefit to us to. There wouldn't be a use for the 180,000, unfortunately.
Okay, so it isn't the total budget then that we're looking at, it's actual new capital that we're deficient on, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. If council decided to take a project out that was funded by a reserve, it would be revenue out, expense out. So it's totally a wash.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirkcalgar?
Yeah, it's still short 188. Doesn't matter what we do with reserve money or the money that wasn't spent in 2021 that was pushed off to have those jobs done this year. You take that out, it doesn't matter. We're at $188,000 taxation of this year. So then, to me, the only way it can be effective, Councillor Howes mentioned, is looking through the budget and dropping things out. Whether staff thinks pickup trucks can be pushed off, maybe they can't be. I don't want to put staff in that position tonight, but is there stuff like that? Right? You know, Councillor, how much weight is, I don't know, I mean, it'd be pretty hard to dig into that, but it'd be stuff like that that we can pull out of the budget to balance it without taxation of $141,000 to residents. That would be the only way we could do it. There's a bit of equipment that can be held off, pushed out, like I understand, and maybe staff can answer that. There's a wildlife fire trailer we talked about. What are we looking for delivery time? Is that something that we're budgeting this year that's not going to show up till next year? Right? Maybe it's a pre-approved budget or something like that item. Is there any items like that that, you know, we're looking at putting it into the budget this year, the taxation on it, but we're actually not receiving it till next year?
Ms. Torval?
Ms. Taggarty, can you answer the question about the?
So Mayor and Council, I feel like I need to move over there, but if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
For sure.
over there.
Please.
Your notes there.
And I'm not just picking on the fire trailer, I want to make sure that's clear. I just think if there's anything like that,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
like I know we pre-approved the wildland fire truck that, I'm not sure when the receipt date is that was pre-approved before budget started, pretty much. But it was like we pre-approved a new loader in October, I believe, or November of 2021, that's in the budget for this year. So is there any items that are not, we're gonna order it, we have to put a deposit, we don't have to pay for it until 2023. That could be the dollars we're looking for here. Next guy's come away with 150,000.
Ms. Tegrity?
So to Mayor and Council, I think I'd already spoken to the Mayor earlier about, he'd spoken to me about this, so, and I think there's quite a chunk of assets that we're purchasing that we're using the PRA funding. So similar scenario, money in, money out, just like the reserves, but, so I have taken a quick look and the last time we met and discussed capital, and the new capital was 805,000. But I would say the majority of those are, like, the new capital was for carryover, to match with carryover, like for instance, connectivity. That project obviously got approved to go ahead from 2021. We've got zoning, we've got the municipal website. So I don't need to point you. Your projects. Fire, the majority of those projects were pre-approved. Some of them have some grant funding as well. So it is a tough one. Flatbed Creek, I wouldn't advise that we were putting in 105, 800 for that. So obviously if we pull that one, then we won't get the grant funding for that one.
Councillor Kirkcalka.
So I understand stopping, put it in a place to try to look through sheets to see if there's anything there. To me, just hearing the overview in regards to how we've used certain funds to pay for certain capital or stuff we talked about. To me, we're really talking about, we're short $188,713. So to me, it's a talk between council and staff, and maybe changes some numbers on the board to come up with that instead of maybe trying to look through there to pull something out of the budget, unless there's an item that somebody on council can think of that it was new taxation and not through the PRA funding or something like that. Like, I'm not gonna dig through my sheets that are,
Okay. Councillor Norbert.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think Ms. Segedy spoke to it earlier. If we look for a small increase from all tax classes, might be the best way to do it. Rather than pick on one, we just give a general 2%. I think that's what it was, 2% over last year's collection. We have to say, hey, we need a little bit of an inflationary increase this year. It's not on par with the inflationary rates across Canada. It's much lower. And then we can distribute that burden across everybody versus one or the other group. Minus utilities, of course, because I know that's it. Can we see if that would be an agreeable?
So your suggestion is Ms. Teggerty's first example here on page 6, I believe.
And that gets us.
Going by assessment? I believe that's what you were describing.
I don't want to just add it on. So her assessment on page 6 is I believe, on assessed value, but if we go on just collection amount, I'd like to see what that looks like. So like last year's collection amount, add 2% onto all of those.
Or just 2% all across?
Yes, minus utilities, of course.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Teggerty.
Ms. Teggerty, please.
Need a bicycle.
Mayor, the council is close, so yeah, that would bring in 1.
Councillor Norbert.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. And I think from a homeowner's perspective, my assessment went up quite a few percent, but my taxes are only going up a slight amount. I think that's very palatable for myself, and I think that's something I could go back to the residents at least and say, taxation has to go up a little bit, but not equal to your assessment.
Councillor Howell.
So wages in the DTR, roughly $6.5 million. 3 years ago, it was $4.8 million. We've gone up about $600,000 in wages every year for the past 3 years. If we were able to take out 2% of wages, we would get very close to the number that we need. 2% is all we're asking for. It's been an increase of 40% in wages. Is there any way we can put this back on staff to say, I don't know how you guys do it, but figure a way out to lower the amount of wages you have in the DTR by 2%. Don't spend $6.5 million this year. Spend 2% less. 2% less is $130,000 less. You know, maybe we go say 3%, then you're over your 1.88. Is that, I mean, I know it's very tough to say over-ranging in a budget to say just cut out 3% or cut out 7% or whatever, but is there any way that we could, you know, I know the union contract is changing this year and likely is going up. I think that's been calculated into this to some degree. But is there any way that we could look at that and say, you know, that's an opportunity to, you know, we can't continue to with this. Next year can't be another $600,000 increase to wages, and the year after another $600,000. Those are the types of costs that if we can get those costs under control, we don't have to raise taxes. We don't have to increase it on anybody, right? And yes, at some point we're going to get to a place where we've came up with every creative solution that we can to save a buck here and there, and we need to eventually add some taxes here and there. We're not at that point right now. We are spending more money than we've ever spent right now, this council. So this is, you know, is a challenge to get that money back. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's another opportunity. It's super easy to go on this thing here and just say, oh, add 2%, 3%. Yeah, that's good. We got 180,000. Pat yourself on the back and go out of here. But to try to look at where our costs got out of control, I am firmly convinced the wages in the DTR are out of control. And yes, when they pass this budget in front of us, we pass it, right? We're the ones that look at it, whether you look into it deep enough or not. We're the ones that pass it, and we're the ones that got to eat that cost. We're the ones that said that was okay to do that. This year, the wages got way out of control. And I think this is an opportunity for our council to say, enough is enough, dial the wages back, figure it out.
Yeah, I do think you have to keep it in perspective too. I think wages have increased as well due to contract services or contractors, due to lack of bodies in director positions like we had over the last year and a half. When we don't have directors in those positions, we had to hire contractors to try and fill those positions. Those aren't regular wages. Those are going to increase wages significantly. And we likely could have more to come this year as well. So to say a 2% decrease in wages is going to be difficult to do, I believe, especially with the collective agreement coming forward. But Ms. Torval, do you have any comments on that?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would rather not have any discussion regarding the collective agreement tonight. With regards to wanting to see a 2% decrease in wages, district overall, I would have to ask, well, what services would you like to see cut in order to because if we eliminate positions or whatever, then there's going to be services affected. So what are you willing to live with?
Right. It's not just a clear-cut decrease, right?
No, it isn't. So,
Councillor Howe?
So, but we went from $4.8 million in wages to $6.5 million in wages. What extra services did we add to the DTR to get to that point? Yes, there were some positions created on staff, and I understand not wanting to talk union stuff, contract negotiations right now. I get that. But what did we add for value to the DTR for $1.7 million in 3 years? What significantly changed in your lives that got that much better by adding $1.7 million over 3 years? The only thing that I can think of during that time is the recycling. It's the only thing that I can think of, which we charge for. We charge tipping fees. $250,000 a year we get for tipping fees. That's what we get, just about $250,000. Way I understand it.
For the user fee?
Mm-hmm.
Or revenue you're talking about?
No, I don't even know what the revenue was. I asked that question today, but I never got an answer to that one. But it's, anyways, regardless of that, I don't feel that, you know, that's the standard stock answer. What our CAO is saying is, yeah, you know, what do you want to decrease? I don't know. I don't really want to decrease anything. Get more efficient. Come up with a way to save some bucks here and there. You know, cut some overtime out. I'm not sure how you have to do it, but allowing that to continue forever and ever and ever by $600,000 a year, we're going to be in big trouble if we don't get that under control. That is a lot worse than having to deal with $200,000 a year tax increase. How do we get that under control? And if we've allowed it to go for 3 years, we're allowing it to go again. Another increase in the amount of wages without saying to our staff, you need to figure it out. I don't know how you guys are gonna, I don't sit in your seat. I don't know how you do it, but you need to figure out a way. There's absolutely no way you've increased my life, the betterment in my community by $1.7 million a year in 3 years. Don't see it.
Ms. Torval, any comments on the wage increases? When Ms. Tegrity gave us those numbers a few weeks ago, I'm trying to figure out where it came from, and besides contract services, I don't know. So I'm just wondering if you had any comments on that.
Well, there were several positions that were added. We've increased positions. I believe there was one at the transfer station and recycle in that area. I know that's not the whole things, but I'm just trying to think at the moment here. There were a couple of positions at the Public Works Department that were added, and that was for better management and succession planning and all those sorts of things, which in the long run should pay off for the district. Of course, you've got the annual CPI, Consumer Price Index increases. That's combined overtime, wages. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have a list in front of me.
Can you explain the CPI index increases? So all of staff will get a CPI increase every year?
That's, they should be getting that, yes. It's kind of like your Consumer Price Index, cost of living increases that go with there's a performance review and you get.
And that's a standard 2%, is it?
It depends on what the price is, what the percentage is. Sometimes it can be as low as 1.25. Sometimes it can be as high as 2 point something, 2.5 or 2.75%, depending on what it is. And I know that with the collective agreement, they get their annual increases each year. And for the exempt staff, we're not governed by the collective agreement. However, in our exempt policy, for the Consumer Price Index, we get that increase equivalent to the collective agreement, what theirs is. So we get the same increase along as theirs is, unless it's higher than whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Howe?
Do we have any employees in the DTR that are paid above the union rate? Are they paid above what the union rate is set up?
Like exempt employees or staff
Any employee, if your rate
union?
is $33 an hour to run the loader, is there any employees in the DTR that are getting paid 34, 36, 38? Do we have anybody that's paid above and beyond the union contract?
Ms. Torval?
Thank you. That's a good question. If their position requires them to be paid 33 or 34, they get paid for what they're making an hour per se,
sure.
right?
But nobody's paid beyond what their classification is.
The only time that I can think of at the moment is where they would be paid beyond their classification is if you have heavy equipment operator, say he's making, I'll use an example, $33 an hour, and he happens to hold a journeyman ticket in some trade. So then when he goes to work on something else outside of the heavy equipment operator and he's working in his field, then I think there's, I forget what that thing is called, the wage is special ticket. Or
Journeyman rate?
Not necessarily, it's
Oh,
a
okay.
special something or other. Sorry, it's not what you use. What it is, special skills, there you go, special skills, yeah. But I can't say that being as an ongoing thing, like it's just.
Case by case.
Yeah.
basis sort of thing.
Yeah.
Follow up, Councillor?
But just for clarity, and I understand that side of it. But if somebody is a garbage truck operator and their rate is $20 an hour, is there any circumstances or instances happening in the community where that person is getting paid above the union rate for their position?
Ms. Torval?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge, I can't see that it would.
Okay.
Unless they're working after hours and getting overtime. right, overtime hours.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Talking about wage increases, so, I think this council is always looking for ways to improve effective operations of the district. And that's what I believe we've tasked our staff with. This is what they brought back to us, saying that this is what they need. Now, times that's gonna fluctuate up and down. I think we're in a transitionary period of increased operations and efficiency. And right now, I'm hoping, and this is a temporary increase to see how things work. We've already seen over COVID, we've seen jobs and roles fluctuate up and down, and we're always looking for effective operations in our community. When it comes, and for me, if I have staff come and say, this is what we need to do the job, and we've asked them to give a high level of service, then I'm inclined to listen to them. But again, we always need to have fiscal responsibility in our mind, and moving forward into this next year, we're going to see how these changes wash out. And sometimes we have to give it a try, and it's okay if we have to change it again. Like that's my feeling going into this. Yeah, tax rates. Everyone's going to be a little unhappy, in my opinion. Slight increase.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions? Motions? Counselor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Councillor Norbury's 2% across the board, I thought was reasonable. We're shortfall of 51,000. I would say recommend we take out the modernizing of council chambers at 53. I mean, we all know it was with Zoom and COVID, we noticed that, yeah, there was some things that we were missing, and it was a little tough at times, but I really think that could be something council could cut. And if council doesn't like the 2% across the board, then we look at the Toyota, we look at the council chambers and add one more thing and balance it that way.
Okay. Ms. Tegerty, council chambers is through PRA funding?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Good. I hear what you're saying, Councilor Kirby. We do need to look at something here. There's just so many different things that are grant dependent. Councilor Howe.
I put a motion on the floor to ask staff to reduce the overall wages in the DTR by 3%.
Seconder. Councilor Kirkowka, discussion. Councilor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Without seeing how that would affect our service delivery, I cannot vote in favor of that at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not in favor of this either, just because I don't know how we would enact on it and enforce it and what the repercussions of these reductions would be. So it's just too big of a scope to make a good decision, I think, at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kirkowka.
Yeah, I won't be in favor of the motion either. What scares me is, and no disrespect to staff, they're gonna cut services without telling us. We're gonna lose the pool, the ice rink, golf, the boat launch. We're gonna lose stuff like that first. They're not gonna, to me, look at stop plowing the sidewalks or the streets or shut our water off or the sewer, because there's mandates that we have to follow. So we're gonna hit the services that, to me, our residents use. And that is the community center and the golf course, which would be a very big concern. But I believe that's where we see our first cuts. It's in services that the community use, because that's, to me, the 3% is quick to get. Is my understanding? I mean, a little late in the budget to say that put for a report to see where we would be looking, but just to do it, and no disrespect to Councilor Howell, but just to do it, and then we see the ill effects of that. It's pretty hard to go back 2 months from now and say, well, let's start adding taxes back to our residents because we've lost the stuff that they want. So,
Councilor Hall.
So my take on it is this: we've had a 40% increase in taxes in 3 years. Sorry, that's mistaken. We've had a 40% increase in wages in 3 years. I don't think decreasing it by 3% is going to make that big. You're not losing the golf course and the hockey rink and the pool and this and that. Do you gotta shut the pool down an hour earlier? Yeah, maybe. Do you gotta not run the golf course right until October? Yeah, maybe you gotta shut it down a week early. But like, you're not losing those things for 3%. We increased it by 40%. I'm asking you to lower it by 3%. What did we get for the 40%? So to me, I think it's doable, and I think you put it in staff's hands. I don't want to pick out the things that they got to do or here and there, but it's a mandate that goes back to them to say, listen, council's had enough. We need to find ways to cut a few bucks, save a few dollars, put it back on staff to figure it out. They've got enough money there to do all the services, all the things that we want to do.
Okay. Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, I kind of don't disagree with Councillor House said, but I mean, again, I'm not disrespecting staff, but if it was a report come forward and said that we're gonna shut down the pool or open the pool later and stuff, so be it, then I can make that decision. But my first opinion is they're gonna do, I'm gonna say the easiest step first. Like, that's what scares me, not knowing exactly how they're gonna cut it, and then all of a sudden we start hearing from the residents, you know, we shut down the swimming pool, maybe it's for, instead of for just the service on it, we shut it down for an extra 2 weeks. Without knowing that, it's hard to vote to 3% is what I'm saying. That's the reason I couldn't vote.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be more in favor of holding off on the purchase of the Zamboni for 1 year and to have a reduction in wages at this time.
Ms. Tegrity, good news or bad?
Can I confirm that's PRA funding?
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Keenan?
Sure, I'll take a shot. Thank you, Mayor. How about the golf course? I think we can do without the one that, I'm not sure if it's ordered or not. I know it's only probably 55,000, but it's a start.
The equipment for the golf course?
Just the one more.
The mower? I do have a sheet here. It says on the golf course, the only new capital is worth 15,000. So it's likely not including that mower. This one, Schedule A of capital funding from April 25th, it has new capital on general government is 90,000, protective services is 271, public works is 105, golf is 15, solid waste is 183, and water services is 140 for new capital, for capital special projects. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Going into these last few years, we've been looking for improved operations of the district. That's where this all comes from. This is where this increase comes from. This is what we've wanted. And sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for. And I think that sometimes when you when you make a request, we have to be careful what we're requesting. Now, moving forward, I think we should be looking at how can we find efficiencies in our budget versus efficiencies in our operation. Because that's what I wanted. And now we're seeing, the wash of that. Moving forward after this budget, I'm not in favor of cutting our staff wages at this point in time, but I think moving forward, we should be asking for that lens of how can we work on reducing overall costs to the district while maintaining a reasonable service level. But unfortunately, this is the time, 6 days before our budget's due, 4 days before our budget's due. It's too hard to make those decisions right now for overarching cuts.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Councillor Howe?
It's not even a cut. Like, wages were 5.8 million last year, and now we're going to go to 6.5. It's not really a cut. It's just keeping the wages in line, keeping it in the track. And I don't know. I think it's super easy to do this, just to add more money onto it. It is tough, and I agree, Councilor Norbury. We are down to the final hours here. This is just an opportunity, an option for council to look at. That's why I put the motion on the floor. If you don't want to do it, that's fine.
Yeah, and I definitely feel your concern, most definitely. The motion, I don't know if I can vote in favor of at this point because we don't have a report. If this motion or this idea came forward a month ago, we would have had enough time to have a report and get some more information in regards to consequences or what services need to be diminished. I think this could very easily be attainable in a work plan, a strategic plan work plan for our CAO this year. Last year we set out a work plan to look at overall arching of our organization, and we wanted improvements in efficiency and operations. This is, again, another addition to this year's work plan that we could look for is decreasing wages or getting a cap on it to some degree. I'm not sure if I support the motion at this point. Any further comments on the motion? Councillor?
I'm just gonna throw something out at just to think of it. I know it's two totally different communities, but the District of Coldstream is winning awards for what they're doing with their financial reporting to their residents, because it's super easy to read through and understand where all the money goes and what they do with it. The community of Coldstream has almost, I think it's 14,000 residents. They've got 40 town employees total. We have 2,300 residents and 75 full-time employees, increasing. So to me, I just think that there's an opportunity here to let staff do something with it. Like, give them the direction to say, we need to dial the wages back a little bit. It needs to be not even in line with the 5.8 million of last year's wages. We're just asking you to lower it by about $180,000, which is still a big increase for them. They're still getting a lot of money to keep going. But if that means that they need to, not hire any more people in public works, so be it. That they are the ones that are in the seats and can find it. For us to ask them for a report and say, well, what's it going to cut out? We're going to cut this and this and this. I honestly think that if you put it in their hands and say, council, it's had enough. We don't want wages to increase anymore. Figure it out. Find some efficiencies. We're not asking to cut services. Find some efficiencies. And I think 180,000 is doable. It's 3% of the amount of money we're looking at spending this year. It's not that much.
Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I don't know if it's fair to compare apples to apples in different municipalities, because when in terms of municipalities, you have to look at service levels, right? Their municipality may offer lower service levels because private industries can make up for that, right? They may not have to run a golf course. They may not have to run a swimming pool. They may have private organizations, right? So, and that's something that I believe Tumbler Ridge is. We recognize is that we have to spend a little more because we want our services high. We want to have a swimming pool that's open 7 days a week. We want to have an icing rink that's open a month early. And it's just a perfect example of our health system and our education system, in that we want higher services, so we have to pay a little more. I bring up healthcare and education because they don't look at service level models for funding. They look at population funding, right? So, but we say we want more. We want higher service levels, and we have to make that up. And we have to pay a little more. So I don't know until I see what Coldstream has to say and how they can do it. It's tough to compare apples to apples because who knows what they're actually providing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Majinski?
I think this could be a discussion for another time, a later date, about the reduction of wages, or reduction of workload, or whatever we want to call it. That should be a discussion for tonight.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Norbury?
We do have a stabilization fund to make up for times when we have increased costs. That could be where we get that extra, $50,000 from.
I was thinking about that too.
So I'd like to propose a 2% increase on taxation levels of 2021 levels to all classes.
Seconder? Councillor Kirby, discussion? Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think this is the cleanest, fairest way across all levels. Again, like we talked about, staff gets wages based on consumer price index. This year it's 6.7, and we're asking our residents for 2%, on all classes 2%. It's very reasonable. Things cost more. I'm understanding of that. I'm accepting of that. But I think when we go to our tax classes and say we're not even keeping up with inflation, I think that's very reasonable. And I think this is the medium ground that we're at.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Before I would vote in favor of this, I would like to have the conversation of what is in the PRA or what isn't in PRA that we could just cut from the budget as another option first. Because, you know, then we can, if we want to just leave taxes the way they are and leave our funds where they are for the future, then I'd like to see those options.
Ms. Tegrity? Any ideas?
Mayor and Council, it is a difficult one. We're very fortunate that we do have the PRA funding. And we're very fortunate that we have put money away in reserves. I looked down the list and it's really hard for me. Say an example, like the insulation on the water tower, I just don't feel like it's, you know, it's a requirement.
Sorry, did you say a requirement?
Yes. PRD closed site project, we've already completed it. And that was also needed to be done. Our actual new capital for this year was quite low. It was 805,000 because even though our capital is 5.8 million, we're able to use the PRA funding, use the reserves that we had saved for. So yeah, it is a very difficult one for me, and I feel like the managers, you know, the directors here, they came to council and they asked for these things. They needed them, had projects that they needed to work on. So, you know, like the zoning bylaw or the municipal website, you know, they're just trying to move Tumbler Ridge, the district of Tumbler Ridge forward. So I am struggling with that one.
That's good enough. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions on the motion? Councillor Howell?
I'm going to vote against it. I'd like to see a little more put on light industrial. I think that I made the argument of not taxing light industrial for quite a few years while gas prices were low and the companies in our region were shutting down and shutting in and getting rid of people. But I think the times have turned for them at this point. I think they're hiring people. I think there's actually discussions of new wells going in Tumbler Ridge. So I think there's an opportunity for the light industrial section to burden some more of the taxes at this point. I think we took it in stride when they were having tough times and shutting stuff down around Tumbler Ridge and tried to keep our taxes as low as we could for them to try to assist in keeping people working in the community. But I agree that things have changed, and I think that those big oil and gas companies, especially with going on in Ukraine, price of gas is going through the roof. Natural gas has gone up, oil's going up. So to me, I think this is an opportunity now where we can ask them to pay a little bit more. Wasn't in favor of it a few years ago, but I certainly am now. So I would like to see us put more of it on light industrial. So 2% across the board, I'm against it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norbury?
What if we made an amendment to reduce business and residential's down 1% and light industry up 2%?
Or we could just make that as the next motion.
We could, but amendment is also.
Let's see it on the board to see what if it makes up tomorrow.
That's gonna be less though.
You say light had to go, put light down.
To 4. So why we do light 4? Yeah. That's 152.
Councillor Norbury?
I'll make an amendment to change the rates of business and residential to 1% increase and light industry to 4% increase.
Ms. Tegrity?
Council, I just wanted to mention, Councillor Morgan, I know you had said 2% across the board, but I just want to mention that we can't do anything with utilities.
I understand. I'm
Just wanted to confirm that.
I'm aware, yeah. It's locked in at 40.
Seconder on the amendment? Counselor Howe, discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Carried, thank you. Discussion on the amended motion. So we're at 152 at the moment. I tend to agree with you, Councillor Howe, that times are good at the moment, especially as well as the coal industry. I do remember last year we didn't increase major industry to help them during tougher times. Light industry, I do remember though, their assessment went down 30% and we still collected the same amount. So I wouldn't say that we gave them a break for the last couple of years. But Councillor Norbury?
Just so you are, Mayor Bertrand, we reduced their taxes the first year we were in council by 15%.
Councillor Howe?
I would also be in favor of a slight bump to major industry as well. And the reason I say that is we never received any money. Well, so that's not correct, but we did not receive any significant money from Quintet Coal or Peace River Coal. But both of those mines this year sold coal, right? Both of those mines sold coal to Canuma, which they trucked down our highways, which was supposed to be a 2-month job, turned into a 6-month job.
Yeah.
And that stuff was going through our community for that entire time. They made money on that. We're talking about $73,000 increase to major industry. Maybe another % in there or 2% in there would get us higher. And with that, I think leave residential tax rates the way that it was previously. I put that back on the major industry for this year. This is a banner year for them selling coal.
It is, yeah.
Whether or not their operations are making money or how they're running it or whatever, it's got nothing to do with me. I just know what the price of coal is right now, and it's through the roof. They're making bucks right now.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, this may be the time that major industrial can handle some more of the burden. So for me, I'd like to see residential taxes, the tax increase at 0, add a little bit more onto heavy industrial till you get to the point where you're over 188,000.
So make an amendment to decrease residential to 0, increase major industry to 4.
Yeah, let's see what that just to see what it does before we make that amendment. Yeah. So what does that put on our major industries? That puts $150,000 more a year on major industry.
That puts us at 218 though, right?
Yeah.
What if we just added 1%, so 3% to major industry? It's 178.
1%. Right?
Okay, so I think we need to defeat the motion that's on the floor and do it again. All in favor? Opposed? Defeated, thank you. Okay. Councilor Norbert.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So what we have in front of us, before we make a motion, let's make a motion and see where we're at.
Well, I think we should discuss the worksheet here before we make a motion, because I'm assuming there'll be more amendments here. But go ahead on your comments.
I think where we're at is great. I mean, I think the only other thing we should be just debating, I think, is either we go 3 or 4% on major, or we can go 3.5. 3.5. Going once, going twice. Split a hair here.
Definitely give you more than what you need. So
That puts us a little over, right?
Ms. Tegrity, if you could do 3.5 on major, please. $195. Councillor Howell.
I can support what's on the screen at the time. I love the fact that it's a 0% increase for the residents of Tumbler Ridge. I think that as the major industrial players are making money in our community, this is the time that we can ask for a small increase from what they're doing in the community. It doesn't have to be more on the back of the taxpayers. Are we always going to be able to do this? No, but we can at this time. There may come a time where we can't tax the heavy industry for that much, but we also might see an increase if one of these non-operating mines were to reopen. If we were to get Quintet to reopen, we're getting another $2 million a year, and then we can do something with that to lower their taxes instead of increasing our spending by $2 million. So that's kind of where I'm at. I kind of feel that's the direction that I feel the coal mine industry is headed. I feel one's going to open here within the next year. I'm saying it right now. We're going to see one in the next year, but I could absolutely support what I see on the board at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'd like to see what Ms. Tegarty thinks about this at this point, or does she want it balanced perfectly?
Ms. Tegarty?
So Mayor and Council, if there is a little bit of a surplus, it's not a problem, I can move it to reserve.
Okay.
Also, because I have a negative on utilities, it would help. Because I was when I gave you the first example, I balanced that with light industry, so to be close would be good.
Thank you. Councillor Norbury?
I'll make the motion that we set residential tax rates to 0% increase, 3.5% increase to major industry, 4% to light industry, 1% to business, and was it 2% to nonprofit?
Bear with me a second.
1%.
The non-profit, was that 0?
Yeah.
Because for the non-profit and the residential, they should be the same. I'm just looking here.
That's fine. We'll leave that zero.
That's my bad, I think. But bring that back.
My mistake.
There we are.
Okay.
Okay, motion on the floor, seconder. Councillor Howell, discussion? Yeah, this is certainly something that's favorable in my eyes. I wasn't in favor of increasing residential taxes, even though there was a 6% increase in assessment overall, but with inflation and the cost of living right now, the affordability has gotten to a pretty ridiculous level, and so any other increases, I don't think our residents will be able to bear, to be honest. I would be in favor of this. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think that's an astute observation.
Astute. Wow.
I've read a few books.
Good for you.
You should try sometime, Bert. And that's a good point. It's something that I guess I really didn't. I'm aware of and I was advocating for, but if we can help alleviate the cost to our residents in this way, it helps offset the cost in everything else. So, good point. I'm in favor of what we have on the floor.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Howell?
To be honest, it's actually lowering the mill rate. We're lowering the mill rate from last year to this year. So, that's awesome.
For residential?
For residential.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. It is, there are still going to be increases for some people in the community because of what their assessment has done. But we've done what I think we can do to burden, lower that burden.
Decrease the burden.
Yeah, we've lowered the rate, and the way BC assessment has now come in and seems to assess Wawa homes and strata for a lot higher than what they've done homes in the community. That's who's going to now take the burden, and we don't have any control of how BC assessment does that. So.
Any other comments, questions? Yeah, I just wanted to point out too, I'm not sure if all of our residents know, but residential taxes is 13% of our total budget. So there's the burden of our residents is certainly alleviated by a lot of our heavy industry in the area. So, all right, any other comments, questions? Call the question, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, so we've taken care of second, third, fourth, fifth recommendation. Looking for a sixth recommendation there, please. Councillor Majinski.
Council approves a 2022 operating capital and special projects budget and the 2022 to 2026 financial plan.
Seconder. Councillor Kirkowka, discussion. Councillor Norbert.
Thank you, Bertrand. So I'm happy with where we're at now. I think it is reasonable to explain to our residents, we do notice the increase in our wages functions. But moving forward, we're gonna look at it with a different lens. I think we have to. But at this point in time, we're in a transition year. We wanna increase the operations. We'll look at it with a different lens next year.
Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I gotta say that I am not totally in favor with the way this budget has panned out. I've had a lot of questions that we haven't been able to get answered by staff. We are in a real tough position with our senior staffing issues in the community right now. Without saying too much beyond that, we all know where we are with that on council. But I've got a lot more questions than I've got answers. I'm comfortable with the degree of where we're headed so far, but we have to do more digging into our budgets, and we need more time. So we need to start doing budget a lot earlier. And budgets, we need to have this type of a look at budget from the previous year to decide what we're going to do moving forward. But it's got to start in December. You got to have your first look at it way earlier and start having these discussions about, number one, how much money are we planning, do you think we're going to bring in? What has significantly changed in the community for the year going forward? And come up with some way to get a better handle on this, because I honestly feel that the amount that we are spending in the DTR could be significantly changed. And if we miss this budget, we can't collect $16 million worth of taxes by May 15th. That is a lot worse than screwing up on this budget by a couple $100,000 here and there. So to me, we have to approve it to get through where we need to go. But I have to say, at this point, I'm not entirely comfortable with the budget.
Okay. You had mentioned you had questions for staff that weren't answered. Can you give any examples, or can Ms. Tegrity?
We talked about the amount of revenue that we would get from waste oil. We had our director come in and tell us that we're going to make over $100,000 from waste oil. Where's that money in the budget? Did we actually come down and get that number in the budget? Is it within it?
Ms. Tegrity?
To Mayor and Council, that question was answered. It was on the list of questions that I brought back to Council. So,
was the number 80,000, 100,000?
related to the oil,
Yeah.
it was between 40 and 80.
48,000.
But I was unable to put it, as I explained to Council before, I'm not happy to put something in the budget if I don't have it confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole oil recycling thing hasn't even been set up yet, and that is maybe down to, the staffing, not having the staffing.
Yeah, I do remember I have the agenda from April 25th with a bunch of questions that are answered on here. So I'm just, if there was anything else that staff can have the
I sent an
opportunity.
email in today about questions that I had, but they don't have enough time to get it. There is a lot going on right now, and I get that. But the same thing with us, we can't ask the questions until we get the information in front of us.
Sure.
We get the information on Wednesday, we got this information on Friday. I have a few days to look at it, then I gotta ask the question. I understand that they don't have the time, but it's because we've come into this time crunch. What I'm saying is, we gotta put it in that we're looking at this stuff way early.
Oh, I agree.
Especially for the next council that's coming in. It's gonna be some new folks in here on council, very likely, and for them to take a budget on and get into the position that we are right now, that becomes easy. Well, just increase.
Oh, for sure.
We're done, right?
For sure.
So this is the tough spot where you gotta look in and find a $15,000 phone bill over at the Visitor Information Center. That kind of stuff can't happen anymore. That's the type of stuff that we need to narrow in on. And if you have a look at it in December, we can come up with a list of questions and start banging that stuff off.
Certainly.
And focusing in on it. So that's just my take on it. I understand staff is under a lot of pressure right now. There's short staff in senior staff positions right now, and it's tough, but we're making do with what we got. Just I'm not entirely comfortable with this budget as I have been in the past.
Okay. Yeah, Ms. Tegerty, we've discussed budget schedules, and I think you are wanting to move the budget schedule to the end of this year, move it back probably 2 months, hopefully. Do you see that coming to fruition this year, possibly?
Perhaps I really hope so. I mean, personally, I'd like to start the budget in September. You know, that's tough, you know. I only joined in July, you know, and, you know, it's a lot of work. You know, I realise my department needs some restructuring. There's other departments that are going for the same thing. And, you know, I would say, like on the wages side of things, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, but from my eyes, I think staff did come. They came and asked for these positions because it was needed. Like, one we forgot about was water and sewer succession planning. I think we're kind of forgetting those things. We have to plan ahead for people leaving, people that have been here years, that have got tons of experience. And I think the problem is that costs more money in the beginning, but I think later on, we should see those savings, and council should see those savings.
Yeah, and as far as budget schedule, we've talked about, you know, backing up the budget schedule for quite a few years. And, you know, we have gone through turnover of CFOs, but it makes sense to move it back into September, October, maybe November. I really would like to see it come to fruition, so I'm curious if you think it's possible this year, or should we try for 2023 possibly? Because I think it benefits us all to have that extra time.
I think this year's going to be a tough one because it's new council coming in. And other meetings I've worked for before, it's just like, because you're then doing the induction with council, so you need to do that. So I think the in-house things could be done earlier.
Staff-wise, yes.
But I think because we have a new council coming in, you'd want to do the induction, and then, I mean, maybe December, you could start talking about capital, special projects, wish lists.
Yeah, I think that's fair, definitely. Would certainly give us another month anyway. It seems like it was a deadline on staff side to just like deadline for capital and projects on the staff side at January 1st or before Christmas, and then we get into the council side. So maybe we move that deadline up on staff, and then we can prepare for council come December. Thought?
Amend the policy, because there is a policy.
Yeah, I think we should certainly bring that back. Yep. Okay. Any other comments, questions on the motion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Schedule of meetings. Any issues there, council? Ms. Torval?
Sorry, I was just conferring with Ms. Haggerty. We need to set a time for that budget meeting on the 13th. For the final.
Okay, Councilor Kirkowka.
I thought the time would be set once the motion was read on the 12th. Because it being 24 hours notice.
Yeah, we do need 24-hour notice, but if we're going to go ahead with the meeting on the 12th is at 9.
3.
It's set at 9 now, right? So we can set the time for the 13th to be,
10.
as long as we have 24-hour notice, we can do for, if we're setting it tonight, we can set it for whatever time.
Yeah, we don't need the 24 hours after the budget meeting on the 12th. We just need 24 hours to set a meeting time, right?
Can we say 9?
9 o'clock then?
For council.
Councilor Norbury?
Remember, 9 a.m. works better for me on Friday than 9:30. That's why I suggest 9.
Okay, any issues, council? Okay, 9 o'clock. Should be a quick one. Okay, any other issues there, council? Question and answer period. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
First,
How are you this evening?
good.
Good. Did you have a question for us in regards to tonight's agenda?
Got a comment. I've sat in these chairs for many years trying to do what you guys did tonight. I've never been a fan of zero rate increase in taxes. I don't think you do it here just so you can shake hands out front here. Councillor, Will,
Ow, yeah.
you mentioned, asking departments to lower. Many years we've done that. We've said this is all we got. And managers, it's not just wages, they figured a better way of doing things. I mentioned today that I thought we'd lost some of our snow removal. And I was told we spent more money in last year in snow removal than we've ever had. That doesn't mean it's done right, because it wasn't removed around my area as good as it's done in the last 10 years. And when I hear councillors say this company made $7 billion, we should tax them, but we're short. That's very short thinking. And I hated to hear it, and I hate that it's gone all over town now. Because it's one thing people like better than low taxes is having a job. And if you people sit behind those desks and you don't have any effect on those jobs, you're lying to yourselves.
I don't think any of us said that.
And I honestly think that this is probably a justifiable year to do what you're doing. But to do it the way you did it doesn't sound right. Well, let's get them because they made some money. Well, there's nothing wrong with making money, especially in this country. That's what you're supposed to do if you're going to run a business. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little disappointed in what it sounds to me. I saw some councillors trying to do the right thing, and I see some sitting there saying, I don't want to piss off. It's election year. I don't want to piss off the residents.
No, I don't think that's the case.
Well, that's the way I read it.
Okay.
And I bet you a lot of people do read it that way.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and I had to say that, and when I heard that, the reason I'm here tonight, I didn't know how any of council felt about what's going on, except Councillor Howe. And I think that's wrong. And I know you say, well, it's on YouTube, or wherever it is on the internet. Well, a lot of us don't have the time or aren't knowledgeable enough to get that.
Absolutely.
Facebook is a lot easier, you want to know the truth. And I'm one that never used Facebook when I was sitting up there. But it sure is, it's nice to hear some of the feelings of your elected councillors.
Mm-hmm.
That's all
Okay,
I got to say.
appreciate your comments. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Okay.
No. Okay, adjournment, recommendation, please. Councillor Kirkowka.
Monday, May 9th, 2022 special budget council meeting be adjourned.
Seconder, Councillor Majinski, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you.